February 14th, 1943. Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The wind comes down off the Atlas Mountains like a blade, pushing sand through every seam and hinge. It rasps against helmets, scrapes across goggles, and hisses along the Sherman's hull as if the desert itself is trying to get inside. Inside the tank, it's louder than any storm. The Continental R975 radial engine is a living thing, throaty, vibrating, hot enough that the air tastes like oil and metal. The turret basket is cramped, the floor littered with spent cigarette butts and empty shell casings that roll with every jolt. The intercom crackles, half swallowed by engine roar and track clatter. Second Lieutenant James "Jimmy" O'Hara, 1st Armored Division, doesn't look like a movie hero. He's 23, cheeks raw from windburn, jaw dark with stubble that never quite comes off in the field. He's standing half out of the commander's hatch, one gloved hand hooked on the rim, trying to see through a world of dust. The Sherman bucks as it crawls forward, suspension working over rock and broken scrub. Ahead, a shallow valley, a few scattered olive trees, and the pale ribbon of road threading through the pass. Somewhere beyond that road, the Germans are waiting. O'Hara presses the throat mic. "Keep it tight. Stay on my tail. Watch the ridgeline." His driver, Private Eddie Russo, answers without looking up. "Roger, Lieutenant."
Turret reversing right.
In the gunner's seat, Corporal Harold Hank Baines rests his cheek against the sight. He's calm in the way only a man can be when he's already decided fear won't help. His right hand stays on the elevating wheel. His left taps the turret wall. 3 quick knocks, an old habit, a private ritual. The loader private first class. Will Carver has a 75mm M61A PC round in his hands like a sacred object. He's sweating despite the cold, because the inside of the Sherman never matches the outside world. The engine throws heat forward. The ammo racks hold the promise of fire, and that promise has a name now. Whispered with a kind of grim humor in British units, and already spreading through the Americans like a bad joke. Tommy Cooker. It isn't fair. Not entirely.
Target 200 meters.
But it's also not nothing.
Panzer 4.
The Sherman's
right.
armor feels thick when you're new to it. It feels less thick the first time you hear an incoming round hit another tank. A burst of radio chatter floods the headset, another platoon leader, voice tight. Contact, movement, something on the left, then static. O'Hara squints toward the ridgeline. Dust columns, thin, purposeful rise in the distance. Not wind, vehicles. "Hold," he starts. The world snaps. A sharp, flat crack like a giant breaking a board across his knee echoes off the rocks. A fraction of a second later comes the impact. Metal struck by violence, a deep clang that you feel in your teeth. The Sherman shudders. A shower of rust flakes and paint dust falls from the turret ceiling. Russo swears and fights the controls as the tank slews slightly right. "Hit!" Baines barks. O'Hara is already ducking down into the hatch, adrenaline making his movements clumsy. Where from? Baines twists the traverse, scanning through the sight. Left ridge. Long gun. He stops. I've got him. Through the periscope, the enemy's shape is a hard-edged silhouette against stone. A Panzer IV with a long 75, the kind the crews have learned to fear, because it reaches out farther than their own gun likes to. O'Hara's mouth is dry. The Sherman 75mm can kill a Panzer IV. Everyone says that. The manuals say it, the instructors say it. The confident men in rear areas say it. But the desert has its own curriculum. Driver, hull down, O'Hara orders. Get us behind that rise. Russo jams the Sherman forward. Tracks bite rock. The tank lurches up a shallow berm and noses down just enough that the hull is partially masked. Gunner on, O'Hara snaps. Baines breathes out. The turret steadies. He squeezes. The Sherman fires with a chest-thumping concussion, the recoil slamming back through the mount. The spent casing clatters to the floor. Carver is already ramming another round in. O'Hara watches the shot kick dust off the ridge near the Panzer IV close, but not close enough. The return shot comes faster than he expects. Another crack. Another impact, this time not a clang, but a brutal punch that shoves the tank sideways. The turret ring groans. A hot metal smell blooms in the fighting compartment. Armor spall, someone yells, tiny shards of steel flicking inside like angry bees. O'Hara blinks hard. Status, Russo's voice is strained. Track's good, we're good. But there's a tremor in the tank now. Not mechanical. Human. On the left, another Sherman in the line takes a hit. O'Hara sees it through his periscope. A clean strike and then a brief pause like the tank is thinking about it, then flame. Orange, hungry. The turret hatch pops open and a figure climbs out, moving too fast, arms flailing as if the air itself is on fire. Jesus, Carver whispers. And somewhere, not far away, a German tank commander is watching through optics just as clear, just as clinical. He's seen this before. British tanks, American tanks, it doesn't matter. He sees the tall silhouette, the exposed sides, the way the Shermans line up like they're still on a training field. If he speaks, it's not a speech. It's a short, satisfied comment through a throat mic. Tommy Kocher, he might say, the word clipped, amused. Let's cook them. O'Hara doesn't hear that. But he feels the laughter anyway, in the way the enemy fires from standoff range, in the way German gunnery is precise and patient, in the way the pass funnels armor into a killing lane like the landscape was built for ambush. He grips the turret rim and forces his voice steady. Gunner, keep firing. Aim for the base of that ridge. Make him back off. Baines adjusts, fires again. The shot hits closer. Dust erupts around the Panzer IV's hull. Loader, up! Fire. A third round. This time the Panzer IV's silhouette jerks, half obscured by dust. Did it hit? Or did the German simply reverse into cover, calm as a man stepping behind a wall? No cheers, no certainty, only the next problem, arriving with the wind. A darker shape appears on the ridgeline lower, heavier, moving with a confidence that makes O'Hara's stomach tighten. It's not another Panzer IV. The turret looks different. The profile is wrong. The gun seems too long, the armor too square. Someone on the radio breathes a single word like a prayer that turns into a curse. Tiger. O'Hara feels the inside of the tank get smaller. Because now the joke about the Sherman, about fire, about thin armor, about being outgunned, isn't a joke anymore. It's a fact, with a long barrel pointed their way. And in the claustrophobic heat of that turret, with sand grinding into every mechanism and the desert turning into a shooting gallery, O'Hara realizes something that will shape the rest of the war. The Sherman isn't going to win by being the best tank on the battlefield. It's going to have to win another way. The word tiger hangs in the turret like a bad smell. O'Hara forces himself to breathe through it. "Driver, reverse, reverse, reverse," he shouts. And Russo throws the Sherman into a frantic crawl backward, tracks grinding rock, the engine rising into a strained howl. The tank shudders as Baines keeps the sight on the ridge, waiting for the moment the heavier German gun speaks. It does. Not the sharp crack of the Panzer IV. This is deeper, heavier, like the sky splitting. The round hits somewhere close, too close, throwing a bloom of dirt and stone into the air that smacks the Sherman's hull like fists. The impact isn't direct, but the shock waves through the fighting compartment. Carver flinches hard enough to nearly drop the round he's holding.
All right, give it a good hit.
"Keep moving," O'Hara barks, voice hoarse now. More command than confidence. The platoon's line is breaking. Another Sherman ahead turns too sharply, exposes its side, and a German shot drills in. The tank stops like it's been unplugged. For half a second, it's just a silent, dead machine. Then the hatch pops, and flame follows, like it's been waiting. O'Hara doesn't watch the men climb out. He can't. He keeps his eyes on his own escape route, because the pass is a funnel, and he's suddenly very aware of how easy it is for tanks to die when they can't maneuver. The radio bursts with overlapping voices, orders, panic, clipped acknowledgments. Somewhere a company commander is trying to knit a defense out of retreat. Somewhere else a lieutenant is screaming for artillery that isn't answering because the forward observers are dead. Or the wires are cut, or the net is chaos. A sound like tearing fabric rips through the air again. Another heavy round. O'Hara feels it before he understands it. A hard slam against the hull that makes every bolt in the turret ring complain. The tank lurches, and the turret traverse stiffens for a heartbeat. "Hit on the side," Baines yells. "Penetration?" O'Hara snaps. Carver's eyes are huge. He pats himself like he's checking whether he's still intact. No. No penetration. That one word no is salvation. Not because they're safe, but because they're alive long enough to be afraid again. Russo gets them behind a low rise, and finally the ridgeline disappears. The immediate pressure eases, replaced by the sickening aftertaste of survival. The knowledge that the men who didn't make it are now burning in the same desert wind. They pull back into a shallow wadi where other Shermans are gathering, some intact, some limping. A maintenance half-track and a recovery vehicle are already there. Men in greasy coveralls waving tanks into rough positions. O'Hara climbs out and drops to the sand, legs shaking so badly he nearly falls. The air outside is cold and bright, and the smell hits him all at once. Burned cordite, hot oil, and something worse drifting faintly from the direction of the pass. A British officer stands nearby, leaning on a truck fender, smoking like it's the only thing tethering him to the world. His uniform is dust-stained, his eyes tired in a way that suggests he's watched too many tanks die. He glances at O'Hara's Sherman and gives a short, humorless smile.
Echo 6, break right. I repeat,
"Sherman,
break
is it?"
right now.
he says, the accent cutting through the engine noise. "Good runner, but she'll light up if she takes it in the wrong place." O'Hara doesn't answer right away. He looks back at the tank, tall, broad, still vibrating with engine heat. It's not a Tiger. It's not even a Panther. It's a machine that just barely kept his crew alive. "You call it the Tommy Cooker too?" O'Hara asks. The Brit exhales smoke. "We did. Some still do." He taps ash off his cigarette. "But listen, you can't fight their tanks like it's a duel. Not here, not anywhere." O'Hara's hands clench. "Then how do you fight them?" The British officer nods toward the horizon, where the artillery is miles back, out of sight, a hidden
Target
fist.
obscured by the smoke wall.
You fight them with
Fire,
everything.
shifting left 200 meters.
Guns,
Stand by for
smoke,
direction.
infantry, air. You make their tank commander fight blind, and you hit him with something he can't shrug off. Behind them, a maintenance sergeant clambers up onto O'Hara's Sherman and slaps the armor like he's checking a horse. "You boys lucky," he says. "That shot came in shallow, ricocheted. Another angle, you'd be walking if you were walking." He squints at the bogey assembly, then at the track tension. "But look at this. Your road wheels aren't shredded. Your track ain't thrown. You can go back out after we tighten this up." O'Hara stares at him. "After we tighten this up," he repeats, as if the words don't belong in the same universe as what just happened. The sergeant shrugs. "That's what these things do. They get hit, they break a little, you fix them. Parts are everywhere. Engines, transmissions, hell. You can cannibalize from a wreck and be rolling again by dawn if you've got the hands." That's the first time O'Hara hears it stated plainly. The thing nobody says in the middle of a fight, because it sounds too small next to the fear of burning alive. You can fix it. Not every tank, not every crew. But the machine itself, unlike so many others, was built with the idea that war is a long grind and victory belongs to the side that can keep moving after the first punch. A few yards away, another Sherman sits with its engine deck open. Mechanics work fast, swapping components with practiced speed, hands black with grease. They don't treat the tank like a sacred object. They treat it like a system. O'Hara watches a crate being dragged off a truck. Standardized spare parts, packed like rations.
We're taking fire.
He watches a damaged periscope replaced in minutes. He watches a track pin hammered in, quick and brutal. And the crew climbs back aboard like the tank is a battered lifeboat they refuse to abandon. The desert, meanwhile, doesn't care. The Germans don't care. They'll still have the longer guns tomorrow. They'll still shoot first from the ridges, and a Tiger, if it chooses the engagement, will still feel like a steel god. But as the sun drops and the air sharpens, O'Hara notices something else in the gathering armor. There are more Shermans here than there should be after a day like this. Tanks that escaped. Tanks that broke and were repaired. Tanks whose crews are shaken but alive. A captain walks down the line with a folded map and a hard expression, the look of someone whose pride has been beaten out of him and replaced with learning. New orders, he says, voice carrying. No more pushing into ridges blind. We move with infantry screens. We coordinate with artillery. We mark targets. We smoke their optics. We make them come to us. You see a Tiger, you don't charge it. You fix it in place, and you call for guns. O'Hara climbs back into the turret, the metal still warm. Baines settles into the gunner's seat with quiet determination. Carver begins stacking rounds in the ready rack, his hands steadier now, not because he's less afraid, but because fear has been given a job. Russo calls up from below. Lieutenant? Yeah. Russo hesitates. We going back? O'Hara looks out over the wadi where the tanks are forming up again, scarred, dusty, stubborn. He thinks of the burning tank in the pass. He thinks of the Tiger's gun, the laughter he imagined on the other side of the ridge. And he thinks of the mechanic's shrug. Parts are everywhere. We're going back, O'Hara says. Not as bravado, but as a fact. But next time, we don't fight their way. The engine revs. The Sherman lurches forward. Somewhere ahead, German tank crews are still convinced they've met an inferior machine. They don't yet understand the danger of fighting an enemy whose tank can be repaired overnight and replaced 100 times over. March 23rd, 1943. El Guettar, Tunisia. Dawn comes in thin, pale bands over the hills, and the cold clings to everything metal. The Shermans sit hull down behind a rise like crouched animals, engines idling low quiet enough that you can hear the wind and the far-off clank of track somewhere beyond the ridge. O'Hara's tank is one of them. Nose angled slightly, turret offset, as if the machine itself has learned to stay small. He's older than he was at Kasserine, not in months, weeks, but in the way his eyes move now, constantly, deliberately, never lingering on one spot too long. He's got a new map board strapped inside the turret and a pencil tucked behind his ear.
All units, this is
He's
Eagle
also
Control.
got something
Hold
else,
position until
something
further
rarer
notice.
than armor thickness. A plan. Fire missions pre-registered, the radio operator says, voice steady. Artillery has our reference points. O'Hara keys the mic. Copy. All tanks hold. Let them commit. Across the line, American infantry is dug in shallow, rifles and bazookas, tucked into scrapes in the earth. The anti-tank guns, 57 millimeters, and heavier pieces sit camouflaged, barrels pointed toward the likely approach. Behind them, unseen, are the real teeth. Batteries of 105 ES and 155 ES laid in, plotted, waiting. And above, somewhere beyond the morning haze, there's supposed to be air cover. Not always reliable in this theater weather, and logistics decide as much as bravery.
Adjust fire. Over.
But today, the sky feels open. O'Hara has been told the Germans will come. Intelligence says so. Prisoners say so. The pattern of dust in the distance says so. And then it happens. Faint at first, like distant thunder. Tracks. Through binoculars, the ridgeline begins to spawn shapes, dark silhouettes cresting and sliding down. Not one, not two, a whole armored thrust. The Shermans don't move, not yet. In the turret, Baines murmurs without looking away from his sight. Panzer IVs, stooges, and he doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. O'Hara sees it too. The heavier shape, thicker armor, the long gun that looks like a spear aimed at the world. Tiger, Carver whispers, the word almost involuntary. O'Hara swallows, presses the throat mic. All units, remember the rule. No duels. Mark targets. Call guns. Make them blind. The German column advances with confidence, like it expects the Americans to do what they did at Kasserine show themselves. Trade shots at range. Die. But today, the Americans let them come. The first shells are not tank rounds. They're artillery. A sudden scream splits the air, followed by a concussive series of impacts that kick earth and smoke into the German formation. The ridgeline disappears behind drifting dust. A Panzer IV veers, trying to escape the blast pattern, only to slam into a shallow ditch. Another vehicle, possibly a half-track, erupts in fragments. The German advance hesitates only for a second, but that second is everything. O'Hara's radio crackles. Observer reports impacts on target. Adjusting fire. O'Hara answers, keep it on them. Don't let them see. Smoke rounds join the barrage-white plumes blooming across the approach routes, smearing the battlefield like chalk on glass. German optics become useless. Their gunners, used to picking off tall Shermans from clean standoff range, are suddenly guessing. Baines rotates the turret a hair. I've got movement through the smoke. Shadow left.
All right, hit it
O'Hara
now. It's
leans
almost in.
forward, eye to periscope. He catches a glimpse dark hull, angular superstructure. Stoogie, he says. Hold. Wait for a clean shot. The Stoogie creeps forward, gun searching. It fires blind, its shot cracks into the earth short of the American line, throwing dirt like shrapnel. It doesn't know where the Shermans are. It's shooting at ghosts. O'Hara's voice is low. Now. Baines fires. The Sherman's 75mm barks once, and the round hits the Stoogee's side armor at close enough range that it doesn't get to argue. The German vehicle jerks, stops, begins to smoke. Carver is already loading. Up! O'Hara's mind is cold now, mathematical. He isn't thinking about glory. He's thinking about angles and timing.
Move the tank, quickly!
He's thinking about how to keep his crew alive while the battlefield turns into a coordinated machine. A Panzer IV lunges out of the smoke too close, startled, as if it suddenly realized it's not hunting anymore. It fires hastily. The shot ricochets off the Sherman's front with a teeth-rattling clang. Russo swears. "That one was close," O'Hara snaps. "Driver pivot. Give Baines the shot." The Sherman pivots on track, quick and brutal, the whole hull turning like a fist. Baines doesn't waste time. He puts the crosshair on the Panzer IV's hull and fires. The German tank's front plate flashes with impact. It doesn't explode like the movies. It simply stops moving, smoke seeping out as the crew bails in frantic silhouettes. O'Hara watches them run. He feels no triumph. He feels only the grim relief that today, it's them and not him. Then the Tiger fires. The sound is unmistakable, heavy, absolute. The round smashes into a Sherman 2 vehicles down. The American tank is hit so hard it rocks backward. The front armor caves like a kicked-in door. The turret stops traversing. For a moment, nothing else happens. Then the crew hatch opens and men tumble out, choking on smoke, alive, because the shot killed the machine before it cooked the crew. The Sherman doesn't burn immediately, and that small detail matters more than any headline. It means the fight is changing, not safer, just changing. O'Hara keys the mic. "Tiger engaged. Mark it." A smoke shell lands near the Tiger's position, blooming white. Another follows. The Tiger disappears into its own fog. The German commander, used to seeing enemy tanks panic at the sight of him, is suddenly fighting blindness. He can't pick targets cleanly. He can't enjoy his range advantage. He can't laugh at anything when his world is reduced to shadows and guesswork. And then artillery shifts again, heavier this time, slamming the ridgeline with deliberate pattern fire. The Tiger backs up, slow and stubborn, retreating behind cover because even a Tiger cannot shrug off 155mm shells landing close enough to flip Earth onto its engine deck. O'Hara watches the smoke and dust and realizes what the Sherman is becoming in this war. Not a knight. A cog. A reliable, replaceable, brutally effective cog in a much larger killing machine infantry, guns, radios, supply lines, maintenance crews, aircraft. And as the Germans begin to withdraw, their assault blunted not by one superior tank, but by an entire system working as designed, O'Hara hears a new tone in the radio traffic. Not panic. Competence. Target shifting. Fire for effect. Adjust left. This is how the Sherman starts to win, without ever becoming the tank the Germans respect on paper. It wins by refusing to fight alone. July 10th, 1943. Gela Beach, Sicily. The sea is black-blue under a low dawn, chopped by wind and churned by 1,000 wakes. Landing craft slam and rattle, ramps trembling as if they're already trying to shake loose from what's coming. Inside one of them, O'Hara sits on an ammo crate with his helmet chin strapped tight, shoulders hunched. The smell is salt, diesel, and men who haven't slept. Around him, other tankers grip handholds as the boat bucks. A few murmur prayers. One chews gum like it's a mission. Their Sherman, painted with fresh invasion markings, waits behind the ramp. A 30-ton promise packed into steel. The crew has stuffed every spare inch with gear, extra track links, tow cables, tarps, rations, a battered canteen cup hanging from a hook. O'Hara watches the ramp. He can't see the beach yet, but he can hear it. Machine gun fire is a constant tearing sound, punctuated by sharper cracks rifles, maybe an anti-tank gun somewhere. Shell bursts lift pillars of sand that drift out over the water like smoke. A naval gun booms offshore, deep enough to vibrate in the ribs. The landing craft shudders with each distant impact, as if the sea itself is being pounded into submission. The coxswain yells over his shoulder, 30 seconds. O'Hara leans into his throat mic. Same drill. We get off the beach fast. No stopping for heroes. Baines answers, calm. Roger. Carver pats the ready rack. Loaded. Russo shifts his hands on the controls, knuckles white. I hate boats, he mutters. The ramp drops. Light floods in blinding after the gloom of the craft. The beach appears in a chaotic slice, men sprinting through surf, tracers skipping across water, smoke drifting low. Somewhere ahead, a burning vehicle throws up a greasy column of black. Go! O'Hara shouts. Russo surges forward. The Sherman clanks down the ramp and into the surf, water slapping the bow. For a heartbeat, the tank feels weightless. Then the tracks bite sand, and the engine's roar becomes the only thing O'Hara can truly hear. They crawl up the beach under fire. Bullets ping and spark off armor, high-pitched and angry. The Sherman isn't invulnerable, but it is a moving wall. And infantrymen instinctively crowd behind it, using it as shelter as they push inland. An anti-tank round cracks somewhere ahead, closer than O'Hara likes. Sand explodes near the tank's right front corner. Keep moving, he snaps. The Sherman suspension hammers over beach obstacles and shell craters. Men wave frantically, pointing toward a low stone wall where an Italian gun crew is trying to swing its piece into position. O'Hara doesn't need an order. Baines wall. Gun. Baines traverses and fires. The 75mm round punches into the position. The wall collapses into dust and stone fragments. The gun disappears in the churn. The Sherman keeps moving. That's the trick. Not elegance, not dominance. Movement. By midday, Gela is a mess of burning vehicles and shattered buildings. but the Americans are inland. Shermans, repeatedly, are where the fight is thickest, pushing along narrow roads, clattering through villages, acting as blunt instruments so infantry can live long enough to advance. In Sicily, O'Hara learns the Sherman's other truth. It isn't just a tank. It's a platform. It can fire smoke. It can carry extra radios. It can be fitted with dozer blades, with wading trunks, with field modifications that turn it into whatever the campaign needs. It can be repaired on the roadside with tools and spare parts that actually exist in quantity. A mechanic back at a makeshift depot says it casually while tightening a bolt. "We got 10 more coming in next week," he says, like he's talking about trucks. 10 more. Next week. That phrase, "next week," is a kind of strategic weapon.
Hard right, through the gap.
The Germans fight like every tank must be preserved. The Allies fight like tanks are meant to be used hard, broken, fixed, replaced. Months later, O'Hara stands on another deck, looking at another shoreline. June 5th, 1944. English Channel, aboard an invasion transport. The ship smells of wet wool, cigarettes, and fear disguised as jokes. The sea heaves gray under a low ceiling of cloud. On the horizon, faint and ghostly, are silhouettes of hundreds of ships, an armada so vast it seems like the ocean has sprouted steel. O'Hara is no longer a fresh-faced lieutenant. He's a captain now, promoted in the slow, brutal arithmetic of war. His hair is cropped tight, his face is lean, his eyes are tired, but the tiredness is controlled. His Sherman has changed too. It still has the familiar hull, the same general shape that German crews have mocked since North Africa. But this one carries the upgrades of a war that's learned and adapted. Extra track links welded onto the front for improvised armor. Sandbags piled where the crew thinks they might matter. A new radio setup for coordination with infantry and artillery in the hedgerow country they've been warned about. And in another unit nearby, O'Hara sees something even more telling. Shermans with different guns. He spots the longer barrel of the 76 millimeters on some tanks, promising better armor penetration. And among the British formations, he sees a Sherman with a weapon that looks almost wrong for its turret. The long, deadly 17-pounder. The British tank commander catches O'Hara looking and gives a small nod, like sharing a secret. "Firefly," the Brit says simply, pride and menace in the word. "For the big cats." O'Hara doesn't smile, but something in his chest loosens. Because this is the answer to the German laughter, not one miracle tank, but endless variations, endless fixes, endless production lines turning out solutions faster than the enemy can kill them. On the night before the landing, the men talk in low voices. Some write letters. Some stare into the dark water like it contains the future. A few sleep sitting upright, helmets tipped forward. O'Hara climbs into the Sherman turret and runs his hand along the steel, feeling the weld seams, the edges of bolted-on armor. He thinks of Kasserine. He thinks of El Guetar. He thinks of Sicily. He thinks of every time someone called this tank a Tommy Cooker. He knows the nickname is earned in blood. He also knows something else now, something German crews still underestimate. A Sherman crew that survives long enough learns. A Sherman unit that survives learns faster. And an army that can build and ship and repair thousands of these machines across oceans can absorb losses and still keep punching. Tomorrow, the Shermans will roll into Normandy, and the Germans will find out what it means to be outnumbered by a tank that never stops coming. June 11th, 1944, near Tilly-sur-Seulles, Normandy, France. Morning fog clings to the hedgerows like damp wool. It muffles sound, swallows distance, and turns every lane into a tunnel where you can't see more than 50 yards, sometimes less. This is the kind of country tank crews hate. In North Africa, you could at least see what was killing you. Here, death lives behind green walls. Captain O'Hara rides buttoned up, hatch closed, because a German sniper took a tanker's head clean off yesterday while he was half standing in the cupola. The memory sits in O'Hara's chest like a stone. Inside the Sherman, the air is stale and warm, carrying the smell of sweat and cordite. The radio murmurs constant traffic infantry reports, artillery nets, requests for smoke, coordinates being rattled off like prayers. The tank rolls forward at a crawl, tracks chewing into a narrow, sunken lane. Hedgerows rise on both sides. Thick earth banks with roots like ropes and bushes dense enough to hide a squad, a gun, a tank. O'Hara's driver, Russo, whispers even though he doesn't need to. Feels like we're driving into a throat. O'Hara answers quietly. That's because we are. Baines is at the site, tense, scanning for movement that might be a Panzerfaust team, a pack gun, or something worse. Carver has switched to a different rhythm, his hands always near the ready rounds, always prepared to throw in smoke or HE at a moment's notice. He's learned that in Normandy, it's not always the armor-piercing shot that saves you. Sometimes it's smoke in seconds. Their infantry escort moves ahead, ghosting along the hedgerow line. A sergeant runs up close to the tank, slaps the side armor twice, an agreed signal, then points sharply to the next bend. O'Hara keys the mic to the infantry net. We're at the bend. Anything? A voice answers, breathy, urgent. Possible armor in orchard. Heard tracks. Can't see hedges. O'Hara's stomach tightens. Copy. We'll probe. Probe. A careful word for what is essentially sticking your head into a dark room and hoping the person inside misses. Russo creeps forward. The Sherman rounds the bend, turret already trained toward the orchard. And then movement. Not a flash of steel, not a clear silhouette. Just the sudden, unmistakable shift of a hedge as something heavy behind it changes position. Leaves tremble. A branch snaps. Baines stiffens. I see. the world detonates. A German shot hits the Sherman's front left at close range. The impact is a brutal, metallic hammer blow that reverberates through the hull. The tank rocks backward. A spray of sparks and paint dust fills the fighting compartment. "Hit!" Carver shouts. O'Hara doesn't ask where from. He already knows. That was a high-velocity gun at spitting distance. "Driver back! Back!" he yells. Russo slams reverse, but the lane is narrow and the Sherman's tail starts to swing. Baines tries to acquire the target through the sight, but the hedgerow and smoke make it impossible. Then the German tank emerges just enough to be seen, an angular snout, a long barrel, the flat menace of German engineering. Panther. Not the desert's Panzer IV, not even a Tiger. A Panther is modern, fast, deadly. The 75mm gun long enough to punch Shermans like tin at range. And the sloped frontal armor that shrugs off many hits unless you're close or lucky. And here, in the hedgerows, it's close. The Panther fires again. The second round slams into a Sherman behind O'Hara's Tank 1 of his platoon. The hit is clean and catastrophic. The tank stops dead as if someone cut its strings. For a moment, there's silence. Then flame blossoms from the hatches. O'Hara's throat tightens. The nickname Tommy Cooker comes roaring back, not as rumor, but as reality. He forces his voice through the intercom. "Smoke! Loader smoke!" Carver is already moving, shoving a smoke round into the breach. "Up! Fire!" The Sherman coughs smoke into the lane. White billows erupt, instantly filling the narrow corridor. It's not a solution. It's a curtain 3 seconds of blindness that might keep them alive. O'Hara keys the radio, voice sharp. "Panther in orchard, grid." He rattles off coordinates, praying the artillery net is listening. "Need immediate smoke and HE on that hedgerow line." Static. Then a calm reply from the Fire Direction Center, American Artillery's cold professionalism. "Shot. Over." O'Hara doesn't hear explosions yet. He hears his own heart. Russo keeps reversing, carefully, because if they throw a track in this lane, they'll die here like a stuck animal. Baines strains to see through smoke. "I can't." A third German shot cracks through the haze, missing by yards, but close enough that the whine of the projectile is audible. An angry mosquito at the speed of death. O'Hara makes a decision that would have gotten him killed in Africa. Driver hard right, break through the hedge. Russo hesitates. "Sir, that bank's—" "Do it!" The Sherman lunges sideways, track biting into the earthen hedge. The bank resists, roots tearing, soil crumbling. The tank climbs, groans, and for a terrifying second, it feels like it might belly out. Then the Sherman breaks through into a field, crushing brush and spilling into open ground like a beast escaping a trap. O'Hara pops the hatch and stands just enough to get eyes risky, but necessary. The orchard is behind them now, partially obscured. The Panther is still there, muzzle shifting, trying to reacquire. To the left, Another Sherman from O'Hara's Platoon Lieutenant Ray Haskins' tank pushes into position, coming in from an angle the Panther didn't expect.
Get him inside, quickly!
Haskins' gun flashes. The shot hits the Panther's side where its armor is thinner. The German tank jolts. Smoke puffs from the impact point. The Panther tries to traverse, but now it's caught between threats, forced to react rather than dictate. O'Hara screams into the radio. "Haskins, keep hitting him! Aim for side!" Haskins fires again. Another impact. The Panther's engine deck smokes heavier. But a Panther doesn't die easily. It backs into cover, dragging itself behind the hedgerow like a wounded predator. And then the artillery arrives. First, smoke thick and immediate, smothering the orchard and the lane. Then he, slamming the hedgerow line with ugly precision. Dirt and shrapnel whip through the trees, branches fall. The orchard becomes a storm of splinters and flying earth. The Panther disappears completely. O'Hara drops back inside, panting. And for a moment, none of them speak. The intercom hum fills the silence. Finally, Carver whispers, "We lost Miller's tank." O'Hara closes his eyes. He sees the flames. He sees the crew scrambling. He doesn't know if they made it out. Bain's voice is flat. "We didn't even see it until it fired." O'Hara's jaw clenches. "That's Normandy," he says. "You don't get to see it first." Outside, infantry moves through the fields. Cautious, rifles ready. A lieutenant runs up to O'Hara's tank, mud splashed on his face. He points toward the orchard where the Panther vanished. "They're in there," the infantryman says. "More armor. We heard them." O'Hara looks toward the hedgerows, now torn and smoking from artillery. Somewhere inside that green maze are Panthers, pack guns, Panzerfaust teams men trained to kill Shermans at close range and disappear. He knows the Germans still consider the Sherman inferior. In some ways it is. But here's the change. The Sherman is no longer fighting alone, and it's no longer fighting fair. It's using smoke, artillery, radios, angles, and sheer persistence. It's learning to crack the hedgerow country one field at a time. And behind every lost tank, there's another one rolling off a ship. Another crew climbing in, another platoon pushing forward. The Germans can win duels. But in Normandy, the Allies are building something bigger than duels. July 18th, 1944. Near Cagny, east of Caen. Operation Goodwood. The ground trembles before the tanks even move. Thousands of Allied bombers have just passed overhead, leaving the air thick with dust and the smell of pulverized chalk. The horizon is a low, dirty smear smoke, broken villages, and the jagged silhouettes of trees stripped bare by blast. In the early light, lines of armor wait behind a rail embankment like a coiled spring. British Shermans sit among Cromwells, their hulls marked with invasion stripes faded by weeks of grime. Among them are the tanks German crews have learned to fear for a very specific reason. Sherman Fireflies. Their turrets look slightly wrong, longer gun, bigger muzzle. The 17-pounder barrel pushing out like a spear. The Firefly crews know their job, and everyone else knows it too. When a Tiger or Panther appears, the Firefly is the one expected to speak first. Captain O'Hara's American company is operating nearby, supporting the push. His own Sherman now mounts the 76mm, not invincible, but better. Higher velocity, flatter trajectory, more chance at range if you can get the angle right and the nerves hold. He watches a Firefly crew through his periscope as they check their gun, adjust stowage, settle into the turret. The British Commander Lieutenant Arthur Taffy Morgan, a wiry Welshman with a cigarette glued to his lip, has a reputation for staying cool when everything else burns. Over the radio, Morgan's voice cuts through the chatter. "Remember, if you lot see a Panther, don't make a sport of it. Call me. I'll do the sporting." O'Hara almost smiles, but there's no room for amusement. Goodwood is about mass and armored surge, meant to break out from calm. Mass is power, but it's also a target. The tanks begin to move. Hundreds of engines rise together, a rolling thunder of steel. Tracks churn dust into the air until the world turns tan and hazy. The advance is relentless, organized armor fanning out across open ground, infantry following behind, artillery ready. For a brief moment, it feels like this is what Allied numbers are supposed to look like. Unstoppable. Then the Germans answer. Not with tanks at first, but with hidden guns. A PaK-43, the long 88 fires from concealment, and a Sherman in the British line is hit hard enough that it jerks sideways and stops. Another tank takes a strike and instantly begins to smoke. The open ground that looked like freedom a minute ago becomes a killing field. O'Hara keys his radio. Eyes out, watch for muzzle flash. Mark it for artillery. A plume of dust pops near a distant hedgerow line, too sharp to be bomb blast, too deliberate. O'Hara points. There. That's a gun. Before he can finish, the Firefly beside the British line fires. The 17-pounder's crack is sharper than the Sherman 75, more violent. The recoil throws the long barrel up slightly. The round screams across the field and hits near the suspected gun position, kicking up a tight burst of debris. Morgan's voice comes over again, casual, as if ordering tea. Guns there. Adjust 1 mil right. The Firefly fires again. This time, the muzzle flash at the German position stops. The hidden gun is either destroyed or its crew has fled. Either result is a victory in seconds. But now, the German tanks appear. A Panther slides from behind cover, turret already oriented toward the Allied surge. Behind it, another. Their frontal armor glints dully under dust, their silhouettes unmistakably predatory. The British line reacts instinctively. Sherman's firing, Cromwell's maneuvering, but everyone knows the ugly truth. A Panther can kill a Sherman at ranges where the Sherman's chances are slim, unless it hits side armor or finds a weak spot. Morgan's Firefly doesn't flinch. O'Hara watches through periscope as the Firefly's gunner settles the sight. There's no dramatic pause, no shouted vow, just trained, practiced action. The Firefly fires. The round strikes the Panther's frontal plate and doesn't bounce. It punches through with a violence that is almost invisible of new physics on the battlefield. The Panther stops sudden. Absolute its turret freezing mid-traverse. Smoke leaks from seams. Even from a distance, O'Hara can feel the shift in morale. That was not a duel. That was execution. The second Panther tries to reverse, suddenly aware that it's being hunted by a gun that can reach it. It swings its turret toward the Firefly. O'Hara's 76mm Sherman fires at the same time, but his shot glances off the Panther's front sparks, no kill. It's the old frustration. You can hit and still not matter. Morgan fires again. The second Panther is struck as it turns, the 17-pounder catching it on a slight angle where the armor is less forgiving. The tank jolts, stops, then begins to burn. Over the radio, Morgan's voice is calm, almost bored. 2 Panthers down. Anyone else? But the Germans are not finished. Somewhere ahead, a Tiger's long gun speaks, and the field answers with the sound of steel dying. A British Sherman erupts into smoke. Another loses its track and slews helplessly. O'Hara's unit advances in short bounds, now smoke screens, artillery calls, coordinated movement. The Sherman's role becomes clear again. Keep moving, keep pressure, keep the infantry supported, keep the radios alive. And behind that movement is a new reality. The Sherman now has teeth nearby. Fireflies, 76mm guns, tank destroyers, fighter bombers, and above all, the artillery net that can turn any suspected German position into a storm of fragments. Later that day, O'Hara meets Morgan briefly near a battered crossroads. The British officer climbs out of his Firefly, face smeared with soot and dust, cigarette still somehow lit. O'Hara nods at the long gun. That thing changes the conversation. Morgan blows smoke and smirks. Aye, the Germans used to laugh at our Shermans. Now they look for Fireflies first. O'Hara glances across the battlefield, where burning hulks mark the ground like black tombstones. They'll start hunting you. Morgan's grin fades a fraction. They already do. He taps the side of his turret where the crew has painted a crude white stripe in an attempt to break up the silhouette of the long barrel. We camouflage the gun, hide the length, anything to buy time. Because that's the new problem. The Sherman is still vulnerable, still prone to catastrophic fires when penetrated, still outclassed in pure armor gun math. But now it isn't helpless. Now it comes with counters. And as the summer of 1944 grinds on Falaise, the breakout, the chase across France, the Germans begin to realize something sickening. The Allies are not trying to win, by fielding one perfect tank. They are trying to win by fielding enough tanks, with enough variation, supported by enough guns, that every German big cat becomes an expensive, isolated predator in a world filling up with hunters. September 12th, 1944, near Haraucourt, France. The fog is so thick it feels like driving inside a wet blanket. O'Hara's column moves through it at walking speed. Engines low, commanders buttoned up. Water beads on steel. Mud sucks at tracks. The world beyond 50 yards doesn't exist, just gray, damp nothingness. And somewhere in that nothingness, German armor is moving too. Haraucourt is not Normandy's hedgerow maze. Its rolling farmland gentle rises, open fields, scattered villages terrain where tanks should be able to see and fight at range. But the fog changes everything. It turns long-range German gunnery into guesswork. It turns Panther advantage into frustration. It makes every fight close enough that angles and reaction time matter more than paper specs. O'Hara's 76mm Sherman sits at the head of his company today, hull angled slightly, turret forward. His crew has learned the ritual before contact. Check traverse, check radio net, check the loader's rhythm. Rousseau murmurs. Feels like Tunisia again. O'Hara answers, except now we know what to do. The radio crackles reports from forward scouts. Enemy armor probing near a village line, possible Panthers, maybe assault guns. The Germans are trying to hit the American spearheads as they push toward the German border, trying to slow the advance with sharp counterattacks. But there's something different now. The Americans aren't just surviving German armor anymore. They're managing it. A forward observer's voice comes in, crisp and calm. We have targets plotted. Call for fire on my mark. O'Hara gives the order. All tanks short bounds. Don't silhouette. Stay near infantry. Mark anything that moves. The fog parts briefly as they crest a low rise, revealing shapes like ghosts. A cluster of farm buildings, a line of trees, and their dark hulls moving. Contact, Bain snaps. Panthers, 2 no, 3. In the sight, the German tanks are half hidden, but their outline is unmistakable. Long barrels, sloped front plates, the posture of machines built for killing Shermans. In 1943, O'Hara might have felt that old, helpless tightness in his chest, the sense of being outclassed. In 1944, he feels something else. Timing. Smoke, O'Hara orders immediately. Then he make them blind. Carver slams in a smoke round. The Sherman fires, and white fog joins gray fog, thickening the world until the Germans' optics are useless. The Panthers fire anyway, their shells cutting through the haze with angry whines. One round strikes a nearby Sherman, punching in and sending smoke rolling out of seams. The tank slows, but it doesn't erupt instantly. Its crew bails, coughing, alive. O'Hara keys the radio. Artillery fire mission. Panthers in the open. Grid. The response is immediate. Not minutes, seconds. The American artillery net in 1944 is a machine of its own, trained, practiced, ruthless. Shot over. The first shells land behind the German tanks walking forward. Dirt erupts. Shrapnel screams. Panthers begin to maneuver, trying to escape the pattern, but maneuver in fog is clumsy. They risk exposing their sides. They risk drifting into American positions they can't see. And that is where the Shermans strike. O'Hara's tank moves not toward the Panthers' guns, but toward their flanks, using terrain folds, smoke, and sheer nerve. Another platoon swings wide on the opposite side, unseen in the haze, creating a crossfire. Baines calls out, voice tight with focus. "I've got a side silhouette Panther. Left." O'Hara leans in. The German tank has turned slightly, searching for targets. Its side armor is showing just enough. "Take it," Baines fires. The 76mm round hits the Panther's side with a harder, cleaner punch than the old 75 could manage. The German tank jolts. Smoke puffs. It tries to turn, but the next shot from another Sherman hits again, closer, deeper. The Panther stops. Not exploding. Not cinematic, just dead. Across the field, another Panther blunders forward into the American screen and is hammered from multiple angles. A third reverses, desperate to disengage, only to be bracketed by artillery bursts that shower its engine deck with fragments. In the fog, the Shermans are not winning because they're better. They're winning because there are more of them, in more places, communicating, coordinating, accepting losses, and continuing. And behind them, the maintenance tail is doing its own war. Later that afternoon, O'Hara drives past a makeshift repair point in a village courtyard. A Sherman sits with its transmission pulled, mechanics working under tarps. Another has a damaged bogie being swapped out with brute efficiency. Supply trucks arrive with crates of parts like an assembly line feeding the front. A sergeant wipes his hands on a rag and shouts to a crew, "You'll be rolling by morning." By morning. The Germans do not have that luxury anymore. A Panther that throws a final drive or breaks a track in the retreat can become a stranded hulk, its crew forced to abandon it, sometimes destroy it, because towing it under Allied air dominance is a gamble. Their tanks are formidable, but their logistics are brittle. The Sherman, mocked for being crude and boxy and prone to burning, has a strength that doesn't look heroic in photographs. It starts, it runs, it can be fixed. And there are always more. O'Hara sees it everywhere now. Columns of Shermans moving up, replacements arriving, units reconstituting after battles that would have shattered smaller armored forces. He sees German wrecks being passed on roadsides, not because the Germans lost every duel, but because they lost the ability to keep their machines in the fight. That's the math of attrition. Not glamorous, just decisive. As evening falls, the fog lifts slightly. revealing the battlefield's aftermath: burned out Panthers, shattered farm walls, blackened Shermans too. American medics move among the wrecks. Crews sit on hulls smoking in silence, eyes hollow. Baines breaks the quiet in O'Hara's turret. "You think they still laugh at us?" O'Hara stares out at the dead armor in the field. Somewhere a German crew is pulling back, furious and exhausted, realizing that the enemy tank they once dismissed is still here, still coming, still multiplying. "No," O'Hara says softly. "Not anymore." And in that moment, he understands the Sherman's strange, brutal genius. It doesn't have to be loved. It just has to keep showing up. December 19th, 1944. Near Bastogne, Belgium. Snow falls in slow, quiet sheets that make the world feel unreal. Too clean for war. But the roads are jammed with it. Churned slush mixed with mud. The ditches lined with abandoned carts and broken trucks. Pines stand black and rigid, their branches heavy with white. The air bites the lungs. O'Hara's Sherman coughs and rumbles through the Ardennes like an old animal forced awake too early. The cold turns everything stubborn, metal contracts, lubricants thicken, fingers go numb in gloves. Inside the tank, the crew huddles in layered clothing, breath misting in the cramped space until the engine heat finally begins to win. The radio traffic is frantic. The Germans have struck hard, fast punching a bulge into Allied lines. Their goal is simple and insane. Split the Allies, reach Antwerp, change the war's ending with one savage gamble. And suddenly, the Shermans are everywhere again. Plugging gaps, escorting convoys, trying to keep roads open under conditions that turn mechanized war into a freezing, slipping nightmare. Russo grunts as he fights the controls. Tracks don't like ice. O'Hara's voice is clipped. Nothing likes ice. They pass an overturned half-track, its crew hunched around a tiny fire, faces hollow. A wounded man rides on a jeep with his arm wrapped in a blood-stiff bandage. The war in winter has a different tone. Quieter, meaner, more exhausting. And in the trees, somewhere ahead, German armor is waiting. Not in neat formations, in ambushes. Panzerfaust teams in foxholes, pack guns hidden behind snowbanks, tanks positioned at road bends where a column can't turn quickly enough to escape. A voice crackles over the radio infantry on the line. "Contact near the crossroads. We've got armor looks like Panthers." O'Hara presses the mic. "Copy. Hold them. We're coming up." The Sherman pushes forward. Engine straining. Snow squeaks under track. The woods close in, dark and thick, and the road narrows, a perfect killing lane. O'Hara's instincts scream at him. This is Normandy again, but colder. He signals the driver to slow, and the tank creeps forward like it's stalking something in the dark. Then the first shot hits. not from a tank. From the side of the road, an anti-tank gun firing from concealment. The round slams into the Sherman's side armor with a metallic shriek and a crushing impact that makes every man inside flinch. The tank shudders, lights flicker, smoke puffs from somewhere below. "Hit!" Carver yells his automatic. O'Hara snaps, "Penetration!" Carver pats the hull wall, eyes wide. "I know." No penetration. Russo breathes out shakily. Thank God. But the next shot might not be so kind. O'Hara doesn't try to duel the gun. He does what the Sherman has learned to do best. "Smoke! Now!" Carver slams in a smoke round and Baines fires. The shell bursts ahead, filling the road with white billows that blend with falling snow, turning the kill zone into a shifting cloud. Over the radio, O'Hara barks coordinates. "Enemy packed gun on the right side of the road. Call artillery. HE, immediate." The reply comes quick, drilled. "Shot. Over." In the smoke, infantry rushes forward, boots crunching, slipping on ice. A bazooka team crawls into position, trying to get a shot at the gun's shield. Machine guns rattle, their bursts muffled by snow. Then, through the haze, something heavier moves. A low silhouette emerges at the edge of the woods, dark, angular, unmistakable. Panther. It glides onto the road like a shadow, gun already searching. In this cold, the Panther's engine note is harsher, more strained, but its presence still carries the same menace it did in Normandy. A tank built to kill Shermans. Baines tries to track it through smoke. I see him barely. O'Hara's mind races. In this narrow road, there's no room for flanking. No broad fields, no easy angles. This is exactly the kind of fight German crews still believe they're built for. The Panther fires. The shell punches through the smoke and hits a Sherman further back in the column. The impact is brutal. The American tank jerks, then stops. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then fire fast, hungry licks out of the turret seam. The crew bails, 2 men tumbling into snow, rolling frantically, slapping at flames on their sleeves. The snow hisses where it touches burning fuel. The old nickname feels sickeningly accurate again. O'Hara forces his voice calm. "All tanks do not bunch up. Spread out where you can. Infantry mark that Panther." He keys the artillery net again. "Panther on the road. Same grid. Priority target." Another calm voice answers. "Rounds complete. Over." A moment later, shells begin to fall into the woods around the Panther HE, bursting in treetops, showering the road with splinters and shrapnel. The Panther hesitates, backing slightly, trying to escape the bracket. O'Hara sees his chance small, desperate. "Driver forward. Close the distance." Russo nearly protests, but he obeys, pushing the Sherman through the smoke toward the Panther's threat. At close range, the 76 has a better chance, and even the 75 can punch a weak spot if luck and angle a line. Baines steadies the sight as the Panther's side becomes visible for an instant as it shifts. "Now!" O'Hara shouts. Baines fires. The 76mm round hits the Panther's side hard. The German tank jolts, smoke puffs from the impact. Carver loads again, hands shaking but fast. "Up! Fire!" A second shot hits near the first. The Panther's movement slows. Its turret twitches. Then a third impact, this one from somewhere else. Perhaps another Sherman or tank destroyer strikes the Panther. And the German tank finally stops, black smoke rolling from its engine deck into the snowy air. The road falls quiet, except for the crackle of burning wrecks and the distant rumble of artillery. O'Hara breathes out, realizing his hands are cramped around the hatch rim. They've survived another Tommy Cooker moment, but not without cost. The column has a burned Sherman behind them, men wounded, the smell of fuel and smoke mixing with winter air. In the Ardennes, the Sherman's weaknesses are still lethal, but its strength is here too. It keeps moving in weather that cripples other machines. It's repairable, replaceable, and when tied into artillery and infantry, it can still kill Panthers in the worst possible terrain. And as O'Hara looks down that snowy road, deeper into the dark woods where more ambushes wait, he knows the war is entering its final, most bitter stage. The Shermans will keep coming, even in the snow. March 7th, 1945. Remagen, Germany. The Rhine is swollen and angry, slate-gray water rolling hard beneath a sky the color of gunmetal. The air smells like wet stone, cordite, and smoke from a town that's been under artillery fire for too many days to count. Ahead, spanning the river like a miracle that shouldn't exist, is the Ludendorff Bridge damaged, scarred, but still standing. American soldiers crowd its approaches, shouting, waving, running equipment forward. Engineers in muddy uniforms sprint with coils of wire and demolition gear, eyes fixed on the bridge's steel trusses like they're watching a wounded animal that might collapse at any second. O'Hara's Sherman waits behind a line of trucks and infantry, engine idling, tracks half submerged in churned mud. The tank is splattered with Ardennes, grime and spring rain, its hull now carrying the accumulated scars of a campaign that has ground its way across Europe. The radio buzzes with urgency. "The bridge is still up, repeat, bridge is still up!" German artillery thumps in the distance, shells walking toward the crossing. Each impact sends tremors through the road and shakes loose dust from ruined buildings. Somewhere, machine gun fire chatters. And in the river below, debris floats past timber, broken planks, the occasional dark shape that might be a raft, might be something else. O'Hara looks at his crew Russo, Baines, Carver men who have become older than their ages in the cramped space of steel. Their eyes meet briefly. No one says what they're all thinking. If the Germans blow the bridge while they're on it, it'll be a steel coffin dropped into the Rhine. An engineer runs up, slaps the side of the Sherman like it's a draft horse, and shouts, "We need armor on the bridge, now, before they drop it." O'Hara keys the intercom. All right, we go. Steady speed. No stopping. Russo swallows. Yes, sir. The Sherman lurches forward, climbing onto the bridge approach. Steel beams and concrete under the tracks replace mud, and the sound changes instantly. Clanging, echoing, amplified by the truss structure into a harsh metallic roar. As they roll onto the bridge deck, the Rhine opens beneath them. Wind whips through the trusses. The bridge feels narrow, exposed, like a hallway with no doors. Infantrymen press themselves against the side rails as the tank passes, faces pale, eyes wide. Some grin and slap the armor for luck. Others just stare, as if watching a moving omen. Halfway across, a German shell lands near the far bank and throws a geyser of water up beside the bridge. The spray falls like cold rain on the Sherman's hull, running down the armor in rivulets. Baines mutters, "They've got the range." O'Hara answers, "Then we don't give them time." The Sherman continues, tracks hammering. The bridge vibrates under the weight of steel and war. Another shell bursts nearby, closer this time, and fragments ping off the truss like hail. Then, with a jolt of relief so sharp it almost hurts, the Sherman reaches the far bank. They roll off the bridge into the ruined streets of Remagen, where German buildings are smashed and blackened, windows blown out, walls scarred by shrapnel. Civilians are nowhere, only soldiers and rubble. O'Hara's radio crackles with immediate orders. Armor forward, secure the high ground. German counterattack expected. Expected is an understatement. The Germans know what this bridge means. If the Americans can pour armor across the Rhine, the war's end accelerates like a freight train downhill. They will throw everything they can at it: artillery, air, tanks, anything to collapse the crossing and push the Americans back into the river. O'Hara's Sherman pushes into the town's outskirts, following infantry through shattered streets. They move fast, because speed is survival. The Americans are building a bridgehead, and a bridgehead is fragile in its first hours, like wet cement before it sets. A German counterattack forms in the hills beyond. Infantry with Panzer Fausts, a few remaining tanks Panthers, maybe a Tiger if one can be dragged into place. Plus assault guns and anti-tank guns hidden in tree lines. But now, in 1945, the Sherman doesn't arrive alone. It arrives like part of a whole moving city of war, engineers laying pontoon bridges, artillery units establishing firing positions within hours, truck convoys bringing fuel and ammo, radios knitting everything into one nervous system. O'Hara reaches a rise overlooking the town and the bridge. The view makes his chest tighten. The Ludendorff Bridge behind them, still standing, still trembling under constant shelling, and on the near bank, columns of American vehicles already lining up to cross. More Shermans, more guns, more men. The German counterattack hits at dusk. It begins with mortar fire, then rifle fire, then the sharp whoosh of a Panzerfaust launched from a ruined building. A rocket slams into a Sherman on the flank, and the tank erupts in smoke. The crew bails into a ditch, dragging a wounded man. O'Hara's tank swivels, 76 millimeters barking HE into building windows where muzzle flashes appear. Infantry moves with them, clinging to the tank's sides and using its bulk as mobile cover. A Panther appears briefly on a distant ridge, firing a shot that whistles overhead and smashes into a house behind them, collapsing brick and timber. O'Hara doesn't chase it. He radios the grid. Within minutes, artillery answers shells hammering the ridgeline until the Panther backs away or dies. In 1943, a Panther could dominate open ground. In 1945, it can be pinned and smothered by coordinated firepower that moves as fast as radio waves. And this is where the Sherman's true late war identity becomes clear. It is no longer a single tank being judged against German big cats. It is the physical presence of Allied logistics and doctrine, a reliable chassis that carries radios and guns forward. A vehicle that can be repaired, replaced, and masked until it becomes less a weapon and more a fact of nature. By late night, the German counterattack falters. Not because German soldiers aren't brave or their tanks aren't dangerous, but because they are fighting a flood. Every destroyed Sherman is answered by another crossing the bridge behind it. Every broken tank is dragged away by recovery vehicles, swapped out, replaced in the line. O'Hara stands in his hatch, looking back toward the Rhine. Tracers arc through the night. Shell bursts wink like angry stars. The bridge still stands, improbably, and the traffic never stops. He hears an infantryman nearby say, half in awe, half in exhaustion, "They can't stop us now." O'Hara doesn't reply. He just watches the line of Shermans rolling forward, muddy, dented, unstoppable, and thinks of Kasserine Pass, of German laughter behind a ridge. That laughter is gone. Now there is only the sound of tracks on steel, and the knowledge that the war's end is approaching, brought closer not by one perfect tank, but by thousands of imperfect ones that kept coming. April 25th, 1945. Near the Elbe River, Germany. The spring air smells like wet earth and smoke from towns that have been burning for days. The trees are green again, almost offensively alive, against the wreckage. Roads are cratered, bridges are smashed, and every village feels like a place the war chewed and spat out. O'Hara's Sherman moves with a kind of weary inevitability now. Tracks clanking through a landscape that no longer looks like a front so much as a collapsing machine. German resistance still flares snipers, scattered anti-tank guns, Panzerfaust teams, but it's not the confident, coherent battlefield of 1943 or even 1944. It's the end of something. In the turret, Russo drives with his jaw set, eyes fixed forward like he's afraid that if he looks away for a second, the war will change its mind and start over. Bain scans through the sight, but his movements are slower now, practiced, almost routine. Carver stacks rounds and checks fuses with a mechanic's calm. They're all older, O'Hara listens to the radio. Reports of Soviet forces nearby, of a scheduled link-up, of strict orders to avoid accidental engagements with allies. The tension now isn't just about Germans, it's about coordination, lines, avoiding tragedy in the final stretch. Ahead, an American infantry lieutenant runs up and points toward a low ridge where a white cloth flutters from a stick. "They're surrendering up there," he says, breathless. "But we've got reports of Panzerfaust teams mixed in. Could be a trap." O'Hara nods. "We treat it like contact until it isn't." The Sherman crawls forward, turret trained on the ridge. Infantry spreads out, rifles ready, moving in short, cautious steps. Somewhere, a church bell hangs silent in a shattered steeple. Somewhere a cow moos, lost and confused. The ridge line comes into view. German soldiers in mixed uniforms, some with helmets, some bareheaded, many with hands raised. Their faces are gaunt, eyes sunken. They don't look like the enemy of German propaganda posters. They look like men who ran out of time. One steps forward, lieutenant by the insignia, though his uniform is stained and torn. He raises his hands higher as the Sherman approaches. O'Hara climbs half out of the hatch, pistol holstered but his posture rigid. He keeps his eyes sweeping for movement in the brush, for the telltale shape of a Panzerfaust tube. The German officer speaks in English that's careful, rehearsed. "We surrender. No shooting." O'Hara's mouth is dry. He gestures to the infantry. "Search them, now." American soldiers move in, disarming Germans, pulling weapons away, searching pockets. The Germans don't resist. Some look relieved. Some look ashamed. Some look blank. Then movement on the right. A sudden blur behind a tree line. Bain's voice snaps in the intercom. "Panzerfaust right!" O'Hara drops instantly, slamming the hatch down halfway. "Traverse right! Target!" The German Panzerfaust gunner, a boy, almost fires. The rocket streaks toward the Sherman, leaving a brief smoke trail like a finger pointing at death. It hits the tank's right front hard. The fighting compartment jolts, a violent clang, a burst of smoke and dust. The crew flinches, instinctively bracing for fire. "Hit!" Carver yells. O'Hara's voice is a blade. "Penetration?" Carver's hands fly over the interior, checking, padding, eyes wide. No penetration. The rocket struck at an angle, or hit an added track link plate, or luck simply decided to stay with them a little longer. But outside, the infantry reacts instantly, rifles cracking, a burst of BAR fire cutting into the tree line. O'Hara forces himself up again, just enough to see. The Panzerfaust gunner collapses into the grass. Nearby, German soldiers who were surrendering flinch and drop to their knees, hands still raised, terrified of being shot in the chaos. O'Hara shouts to them in harsh, angry German he's picked up over the years. "Stay down, hands up." He turns back to his crew. "Bain's HE into that tree line, quick." The Sherman fires. The high-explosive round detonates among the trees, shredding branches, sending splinters and dirt into the air. The last pockets of resistance evaporate, either dead or fleeing. A few minutes later, the ridge is quiet again. O'Hara exhales slowly, realizing his heart is hammering as hard as it did at Kasserine. Even now, even at the end, the Sherman can still become a coffin in 1 second. They continue forward toward the Elbe, where the American advance has been ordered to stop. The war has become a set of lines on a map, decisions made by generals and politicians. But the tank crews still have to drive the last miles. Near a ruined bridgehead, O'Hara's unit finally sees them. Soviet troops on the far side, waving, shouting, a moment that will become a photograph. Americans and Soviets meeting, the war in Europe visibly collapsing into history. O'Hara's Sherman halts. He climbs out and stands on the hull, looking across the river. The Soviet soldiers look as exhausted as the Americans, faces dirty, uniforms battered. They grin and wave anyway. Russo climbs out beside him. He looks around, taking in the quiet, the spring leaves, the distant crackle of occasional gunfire that sounds like the war's last cough. "Is it over?" Russo asks. O'Hara doesn't answer immediately. He looks at the Sherman's scarred, patched track links welded on, paint worn down to primer in spots. The tank that German crews once mocked. The tank that British troops once cursed as a burner of men. He thinks of the men who didn't make it, Miller's burning tank in Normandy. The crews lost in Tunisia, the ones who died without names that anyone outside their units will remember. And he thinks of the factories far behind the lines, of standardized parts packed in crates, of mechanics working under tarps, of ships crossing oceans loaded with steel. He finally answers, voice low. Almost. Because the war ends not with a single dramatic duel, but with exhaustion German units surrendering by the thousands, their armored spearheads reduced to scattered wrecks. The big cats, tigers, and panthers still look intimidating in photographs, but they couldn't be everywhere. They couldn't be repaired fast enough. They couldn't replace their losses. The Sherman could. That's the cruel truth that turns mockery into defeat. The Sherman wasn't built to be a legend. It was built to be counted. Counted in convoys. Counted in replacement hulls. Counted in divisions that could take losses and still move forward. Counted in the relentless math that German crews couldn't outrun. And by the spring of 1945, the laughter was gone, replaced by a different sound. American tracks rolling through German towns, through shattered forests, through the last defenses, not because each Sherman was superior, but because there were always more. May 8th, 1945. Europe. Germany surrenders. O'Hara sits on his Sherman's hull in a quiet field, helmet off, listening to distant celebration gunfire in the air, men shouting, laughing, crying. He runs a hand over the steel, feeling the dents and welds, the history embedded in metal. The Sherman never stopped being vulnerable, but it never stopped coming either. The smallest thing that changes the ending isn't a bigger gun, it's a set of spare track links welded to the front and the angle of impact. In the chaos of a surrender that still feels like a trap, a Panzerfaust doesn't become the final blow because it catches that improvised steel and glances off smoke, a hard metallic crack, and a few stolen seconds. Those seconds are everything. Enough for the crew to breathe, hold discipline, coordinate with the infantry, and avoid a fatal mistake. War isn't only shaped by grand plans. Sometimes you live because days earlier someone tightened a bolt, laid a weld, and chose exactly where to mount a piece of scrap. That's soldiers' lost voices, where the smallest details still carry the loudest echoes. We're soldiers' lost voices telling the moments when history turns on something small. Small details change everything. What small detail mattered most to you in this story and why? What should we cover next? A weapon, an ambush, or a survival moment you've never heard told this way? To everyone watching, soldiers' lost voices, help us break this down. If you were in that Sherman, what would you reinforce first? Track links, extra armor, or your field of view routine? Do you think that deflection was pure luck or preparation paying off? Drop your take in the comments and tell us the next story you want us to dig up.